All right, Charles, let's have a look at those latest property numbers. Give us a snapshot of what's actually happening in that property market. What can you tell us?
Well, the clearance rate's 68.5% across the country. This time last year it was 67.4%, so it's pretty much on par. Sydney was the best performer again, has been for a little while. Melbourne crept in there a little bit, but 73.1% for Sydney market and clearance rates, and Melbourne was sitting at 68.9%. So Brisbane's still steady in the 40s and Adelaide steady in the 50s, but overall it's a nice round figure to have this time of year. So I'm comfortable with the way they've been. Again, we talked boom. Boom is 80+%.
Yeah, it's looking pretty flat.
We've only seen that once, so this is why I'm glad that even the RBA are now talking about the bubble as not being an issue.
Okay. Next statistic.
Yes, well, we come up to the listings and they've been climbing every week now. This week it's a bit softer because we expected coming into Christmas a 0.38% climb over this time last week, and it's been progressively climbing each week. So I'm happy with that, but again, we'll see a slowdown while people are preparing for the festive season. The New Zealand market, of course, they're up right across the region in stock. Especially in the smaller centres, but on par with Australia. I think New Zealand's doing better with their stock levels right now.
So it should be a concern that line is heading negative?
Well, you know, it's not quite really heading downwards, it's up overall. Just overall, if you look over the overall period of time, I'm comfortable with that. We expect a slight decline now because of the Christmas season. But in the true sense of the word, it's just in a nice level right now. We really don't want it to go backwards the other way.
Okay, and rental price movements?
Yeah, they've been moving very steadily, only small increments. Sydney's been very stable, 12.79% has been the increase overall for the last 24 months. Melbourne's sitting at 8.61%, and if you get to Perth, that's been the best performer at 19.63%. So we've got an average of 13.68%. So they're sitting in there very nicely. But again, they're sitting between the 12 and 13% climb, and they've stayed in that range for a very, very long time.
Okay, and the vacancy rates?
They're good. Sydney sitting at 2.16, great vacancy rate to have. Melbourne is a bit higher at 3.63. Perth, 6.63, and that's been floating between 6 and 7. So that's giving us an average of 4.14%, and that's a figure that I like to see. But I'm noticing across the market, particularly in Perth, the vacancy rates are impacting now. So a lot of landlords might have to start competing for their tenants. Okay,
well, there's a lot of high-profile, big developments happening. I'm thinking particularly in Melbourne and Sydney. There's always talk about Melbourne has a glut of apartments coming on, all these skyscrapers that are planned to be built in the CBD. Sydney, you've got Green Park coming online in the next couple of years. How concerned should investors be about that? Does that indicate that maybe you don't want to be buying into what's going to be a relatively competitive field in those 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in the CBD, or is it just going to reach that huge amount of demand that's coming online?
The demand is still there. It's still there. We have a box full of demand and half a box full of supply.
Okay.
And so when that supply kicks in, I think it's going to be nicely balanced. I think what we're going to see is a flat market in terms of growth, probably not flat, but just modest growth, because there just won't be that crazy activity. So I'm really looking forward to the glut of properties coming onto the market in those capital cities. Investors are generally there for the long term. Stuart said earlier, it's not just about rent, it's about capital gain, and so they're there for the long term, and that's what they need to be.
Okay. Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask Chris, Charles, coming into...
I've been getting my name wrong tonight.
Coming back to after Christmas, are we expecting a heavy demand period just after Christmas, or are we expecting to ease back into the year?
No, I think there'll be a good demand for property. There are a lot of people still interested in property, but the buyers are taking a second look in most suburbs. They're not going and buying straight away. They're going and I'll come back next week and have a look. And I think that's really the marketplace that I'm very comfortable with, and I think that's what the industry needs to see.
Yep. And on that note, that's all we have time for. Thanks for joining us this evening. Until next week, I'm Kate.